Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. This is Paul from This Way to the Aquarium, and in this video I am here in my unfinished basement and I'm going to show you how I put together a ultra cheap do-it-yourself aquarium stand. So all in all, the stand cost me about $24. It's just a couple of cinder blocks and a piece of 2x6x8 cut in half. So it's a dimensional lumber. I bought it from Home Depot. Basically an 8-foot board. 2x6x8 is the measurement, and you can find them at any hardware store. I cut it in half myself. You can ask the hardware store. A lot of hardware stores will cut it for you. Basically just cut it in half, and in that case it becomes two 48-inch pieces. So the capability of the stand are pretty sturdy, so you can imagine it will hold all the weight of the aquarium, the water, the decorations and whatnot, and you'll have very little issues with the stability of that stand. So let me show you the stand right here. So here is the stand. As you can see, there are 3 cinder blocks on each side. Roughly cost about $3 a piece, and the 2x6x8, which was cut into 2, cost me about $6. So that's pricing in terms of today's price of wood has kind of fluctuated in the past, but I checked the most recent price here and it was $6 for a 2x6x8 and about $3 for each of these cinder blocks. You can add a dollar or two based on your tax rate. In this case, you can see I've got a 20-gallon long tank here. I did add a couple of pieces of padding to each side of the tank. That's just to make sure that the tank itself is not subject to torsional stress. Basically, you want each of these corners to be level. You don't want one corner to be higher than the other, because that's where more of the issues come with your tanks. If one corner is higher than the other, that causes stress on the frames, and then you've got a greater chance of it leaking. Similarly, you want a level tank. As you can see there, it's pretty much level. And so you need to take account of your flooring as well too. The flooring here is pretty level in my basement, depending on where you put it. You could always shim one side of the stand or another as you need. You definitely can support larger tanks with this setup. I've seen other people use 2x4s for this. I prefer to have the 2x6. And in this case, I've got a little extra space on each side that I can use to store my food, put other equipment, such as an air pump over there. So yes, the stand is not necessarily the best looking of stands, especially if you want to put this in the main display area. While I do have mismatched blocks over here, you can get the same blocks. It's just when I purchased it, they didn't have 6 of these flat type of blocks. In which case, for this situation, this is an unfinished area. Nobody's going to be visiting this area, and this is a quarantine tank. So I do plan on setting up a fish room on the other side of the basement over there. So I will be using this type of stand for that as well, and I will make sure that I get uniform cinder blocks. Now let's say you did want to use this type of stand in an area where people will be going, where people will be looking, and you necessarily don't like this look. Obviously it's a pretty industrial type of look. Doesn't look the greatest, but there are a couple things you can do to change the look. One of the things I would do is this wood right here. It's unprimed, it's easily paintable. Throw on some primer, throw on some black paint. Same thing with the cinder blocks. You can go to your big box hardware store, any hardware store, and buy paint that's suitable for concrete and cinder block. You only need to paint the fronts of these if you want, depending on the type of look you're looking for. So paint it all black. Might look a little more presentable in your location, or paint it another color depending on what the needs are of your room. Another suggestion is you can go buy thin pieces of plywood, and you can just screw it into this piece over here, run it down to the bottom, and then paint that black. So a piece of plywood might run you another $10 to $20. You could cover this entire thing up. And then, depending on your skill level, whatnot, you can build a cabinet in there That way you can have storage underneath there. As well, these hardware stores also sell pieces of vinyl sheets, pieces of PVC sheets. Basically, these sheets are a solid color. If, let's say, you wanted black, you can get a solid black. They have many different uses, but you could cut it to size. You could cover it up over your cinder blocks. You could cover up the wood, and that adds a different look, different covering to your frame. And that way it makes it more presentable in your formal areas where you might have guests coming and you don't want them seeing this cinder block stand. So if I were going to put this in a main level and I was going to use this type of stand, if we were going on carpet, I would have no issue. You could put it directly on carpet. If you were going on hardwood, I would put some sort of thin rubber mat underneath the cinder blocks just to protect the hardwood, because as you're walking around the hardwood, it does create micro vibrations, and there's a chance that it will scratch up your floor. But if you've got a thin rubber mat underneath the cinder blocks, you won't have that issue, and that'll protect your hardwood floor. All in all, these are pretty sturdy stands. I could put up a much taller tank, with a lot more water on this one without worry. And in my fish room, once that's built out, I plan on holding multiple tanks, so I'll have, I won't cut the wood. I'll probably go with 8 or 10 foot lengths, and then quite a number of cinder blocks, as well as multiple levels too. So in this case, this is just supporting one tank. You can add multiple tanks as well if you wanted to, and then that would just involve adding more cinder blocks, making sure that you've got support underneath and then support on top to spread those cinder blocks out. In this case, if I wanted to do double tier and then putting cinder blocks on top of the wood as well, and just leaving enough room for the tank in the middle. So most of your big box stores will cut the wood for you, at least one cut. They might do more than one cut and charge you for that. Ask them, find out. They're pretty easy to cut yourself if you have the right tools. I cut it using a circular saw and a speed square, and a speed square just helps me get a straight cut along the edge. So let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on a cinder block stand? Would you consider it? Especially if you've got a fish room, it's pretty cheap, it saves you money versus building out the wood stands. If you're going to build your own wood stands, it takes a little bit of a skill, you need the right tools, and building your own 2x4 wood stand or 2x6 wood stand is cheaper than buying the commercial stands from your store. At the same time too, it needs to be built pretty well, pretty level, just to make sure your tank is safe as well.